So let's just discuss the virtualization concept. What does virtualization actually means? So it's an ability which allows the sharing the physical instance of a single application or resources among the multiple organization or the user. Now that's what the keyword for the virtualization is. The biggest USP is it allows the sharing of the physical instance of a single application. Means in reality, the application will be deployed on a server. The resources of the server can be accessed by millions of people around the world. Now, what are the resources we are talking of? We are talking of hardware platforms, we are talking of storage devices, and we are talking of the operating system and the network resources. So in reality, we will have, when we talk of the network resources, we'll have the bridges, we'll have the routers, we'll have switches, we'll have gateways, we'll have the servers, we'll have the many number of the applications which are running on the servers. So we can create multiple instances of it. And then that instances can be provided to multiple number of the users around the world. So these instances will provide the services to the user. And how it has been possible, because if you would have studied the operating system, we have got a process, and the process contains the threads. A process cannot exist without a thread, and a thread cannot exist without a process. So that thread is what we say is one of the instance of a process. So moment you garbage collect a process, moment you kill or terminate a process, your thread also gets garbage collected, because thread is allocated to the memory, is allocated to the address space within the process only. So thread is highly dependent upon the process for its existence. And what is the theoretically upper limit? The number of the threads which can be a part of the process, there is no upper limit. A process can have as many threads as possible. But more the number of threads that will execute, the system performance will go slow down. Now on the same lines, here we have had a multiple number of resources. Like we have got a CPU, we have got a RAM, we have got a hard disk, we have got a networking devices, bridges, routers, switches, gateways. Anything that can be shared can be provided as a service to the clients in the cloud computing domain. That is why we have got three kind of the deployment model, like software as a service, platform as a service, and the infrastructure as a service. Means anything that can be shared, anything that can be provided as a entity to the user कि वो उसको use कर सकता है for its benefit, then it should be done all on the virtual world. So web, the internet, the world wide web is a backbone for the cloud computing. If internet is not there, is if network connectivity is not there, the distributed computing will not work and cloud computing will not work. So it's very important that we identify the resources that can be shared, and then the user can be given a privilege or a permission to access that particular resources. Let's take a physical example. In our university or library, so we, let's say university offers library as a service. Now in that library, all the books are in physical form. So you have to actually go to Dwarka campus and become a member of the library to get access to any of the physical book, right? So then that book is issued to you. You take a possession of that book for 15 days or 1 week time. So only you are reading that book, nobody else is reading the book in that 15 days. So you block that book for 15 days time. So that is a physical sharing of a resource. But in the case of virtual sharing of the resource, let us create an e-copy of the book and host it onto some server. And the users, what they will do, they will download the instance or a copy of that resource, and they will start using it. So in a virtual world, in a web-based world, it is possible that yes, I can create multiple instances of that same application, and then millions of users around the world can simultaneously access it. That's the biggest advantage of the computing in a virtual world. Now, who came up with this concept of virtualization, and thereby having a concept called virtual machine? There were two people called Popek and Goldberg who came up with this concept of virtual machine. Physical machine, we all know. We all know, we have already using the laptops, the desktops, the smartphones. They're all perfect devices having the good amount of the processing power, the good CPUs there, good amount of the buffer space, both primary and secondary storage medias are there, a hard disk and RAM. We got a cache memory there. So all the devices are good, smart enough. But can I create instances of those devices and allow the sharing of it among multiple users? If that is possible, then virtualization is holding good. So it's a concept what we call the efficient, isolated duplicate of a real computer machine. That is what we say the virtual machine. And every word is equally important here. We say efficient, yes, it should work perfectly fine. The user should never come to know that, let's say they are using, if there are 10,000 instances of an application, it shall never come to know that they're using a 4,556 instance of an application. For them, every instance is dedicated to them. So that's what we connection pooling, the instance pooling. So virtualization gives us that ability to use to create an instance of a machine and then allow the usage of that instance among the million number of the people. Let's say I got a smartphone at my home and we have 4 people in our home. Now, if the virtualization was possible, so I could create 4 instances of that smartphones, and let's say my spouse and my 2 kids would be using the same smartphone, but that is not possible. So we have got 4 different devices being used by 4 different people. Same in your home, everyone would be having their own uh, mobile. That means they're having a smartphone or a handheld device which has got a unique IMEI number and the IMSI number, International Mobile Equipment Identity Number, and the International Mobile Subscriber Identity Number, IMEI and IMSI. So 2 numbers are there, and they are uniquely identify the particular device. And since virtualization is not possible, as a result, every individual has to use the unique device in their hands. But in the case of the cloud computing, I can create multiple instances of my hardware resources as well as software resources. And then the users around the world can log into the server. I will do the authentication. And if they follow the authentication, they pass the authentication, then yes, they can access the resources being provided onto the server. So virtual machine is a software implementation of a machine, the physical machine, that is what we call computer or a PC, that executes a program like a physical machine. So user will never ever come to know that he is being providing a services with the help of virtual machine or by a physical machine. User will always come to know that when he is sending a request to a server as a client, he is being processed, his request is being processed just like normal ordinary user, and physical machine is handling his request, not the virtual machine. So virtual machine will never ever let come the user know that yes, it is this kind of machine which is handling or processing the request which is being demanded by the user. That's the biggest advantage of using the virtual machine. Now let's take a scenario where how does the virtualization actually something like that. So let's discuss about the concept of virtualization, which is very important from the perspective of the cloud computing. When you use a cloud computing, you are accessing pooled resources using a very good technique, what we call a virtualization. Means you are creating a virtual instances of the resources which you want to provide to the millions of clients around the world. So if I'm a cloud service provider and I've got multiple resources at my disposal, like the CPUs. Now here I will call virtual CPUs. Then the RAM space, the primary storage media, the secondary storage medias, then the servers like the Apache Tomcat server, BA WebLogic servers, the JBoss servers, or even the network infrastructure like the routers, the switches, the gateways, the hubs. So I can all create the virtual instances of it and provide them for my client. So virtualization assigns a logical name for a physical resource. Now that's a very important statement. It assigns a logical name for a physical resource and then provides a pointer to that physical resource when a request is made. So as and when the request is come from the client, what will the operating system do? If the operating system supports virtualization feature, it will make a pointer which is logical in nature to a physical resource. And now that pointer will provide the resources or the services to the client who is requesting for them. So it's all very dynamic technique. It's not very stable. Means it will not run 24 by 7 by 365 basis. As and when you require, the services will be provided to you. If you don't require, no virtualization will be done. So it's all demand driven. When you ask for it, you will be provided the virtualized features. Else you don't need it. You don't ask for it. It is something like that. So it's very dynamic in the sense that the mapping can be assigned based on the rapid changing condition. Just like we discussed the elasticity model of the cloud computing, the elasticity feature. You can, as and when your requirement for the virtual resources increases or decreases, accordingly the billing will be done. So virtualization is dynamic. So today, if you want two virtual CPU with 4 GB of RAM and 10 GB of hard disk space, you will be charged, let's say, 100 rupees per day. Tomorrow, if you want 6 virtual CPU, 16 GB of RAM, and let's say 10 GB of hard disk space, you will be charged 1000 rupees. So it depends upon your requirement. For example, if I'm working on big data tools and technology, I want to work on Hadoop. Now, I know Hadoop charges a lot of memory, it consumes a lot of memory during its execution. So I need to have that kind of infrastructure environment. So what I will do, I will reach out to any of the cloud service provider. I say I want to upgrade my system only, let's say, for a duration of 1 week, right? Because I want to work on Hadoop. So you provide me that environment only for a duration of 1 week, and I'm ready to pay you the cost because I don't want to upgrade my system forever. My requirement is very dynamic, only for a short duration of time, 1 week. So I will pay the infrastructure cost for 1 week. You provide me with the infrastructure, I will pay you the cost, and then it's all done. So you don't need to upgrade your system forever. So it's all very dynamic in the sense that elasticity model works. The consumption of the client increases and decreases, and the mapping will always be done dynamically. What kind of mapping we are saying? The operating system will create a logical pointer to a physical resource to provide the service to the incoming client. That's the biggest advantage of the virtualization. And the different types of the virtualization that characterizes the cloud computing. Some of them, let's see. First is the access. A client can request the access to a client service from any location. So you may be anywhere around the world, US, Europe, Asia, wherever you are world, but and you do not know where your cloud service provider is. For example, in NIC, we know they have got their setup in East Delhi, so I can approach them whenever on behalf of my university. Whenever there's a problem, I go to the NIC office, and then we try to figure that out and we try to sort that out problem as such. But I cannot do it for if Google has a problem or the IBM has a problem. I cannot approach them. I can just drop them the mail that this is the problem I am suffering from. But then will the solution be provided depends upon them. And where are the servers? I don't know. Where are the Google servers? Where are the IBM servers? Where are the Microsoft servers? I don't know because they never reveal this thing to the end user. Leave alone the end user, at times they don't even reveal to the local and the state governments. They don't tell where they are physically located. And that's why they're not bounded by the laws of the land, because anything which is virtual in nature, anything which is non-tangible in nature, you cannot enforce the laws of the land. You can only enforce the rules only for the physical assets or physical tangible assets as such. Now let's say if I want to go for virtualization, just like example I took, let's say I have got the Oracle virtual machine. So I will just go for the Oracle. This is the machine I've installed on my system. I go to the Oracle virtual machine, virtual box, right? I click on it. So now this is what I'm saying. I'm starting the virtualization feature. Now in IoT, I work in an area of IoT. We have got a Contiki Kuja simulator. Kuja is a Contiki on Java. Cooja. Contiki on Java. That's called Kuja. Now, Kuja works in Linux environment. It does not work in a Windows environment. Now, to work in a having a base operating system is Windows, and I want to work on a Linux. Why? Why Linux? Because I want to work on Contiki, which is a simulator which works only for the Linux. They don't have a Windows edition as such. So what I have done here, I have downloaded and configured the Oracle Virtual Machine box, the Oracle Virtual Machine Manager. So what I do, I can see here, I got instant Contiki 6. I can click on the start, and then the step-by-step operation will get performed on my system, and wherein the Linux flavor will be provided to me using the Oracle Virtual Machine box. So what I do, I start off with a virtual machine box, and I request the virtual machine box to start the another operating system for me. Now that could be the Ubuntu, Fedora, Gentoo, Red Hat Linux Edition, any kind of the Linux flavor that on which I would like to work on. So here I'm taking example of Ubuntu. So my base operating system, the master operating system on my hard disk drive is still Windows. Now since I wanted to work on another operating system, what did I do? I downloaded the virtual machine manager, VMM. Now in this case, the virtual machine manager is the Oracle, but there are many virtual machine boxes available here. So depending on my choice, I can download one of them. Now then what I can do, I request my virtual machine manager, which is Oracle virtual machine box here in this case, that to start another operating system for me. Now if the another operating system is properly downloaded and configured and installed on your system, then what you can do, your virtual machine box or the Oracle virtual machine box, or for that matter any virtual machine manager, will ping or start another operating system which you have requested for. And then keeping the base operating system as Windows, I can work on any other kind of the operating system. That's the biggest advantage of going for a virtualization concept. That was the first time the virtualization came into very big way. And then the cloud computing, the people, the NIST, National Institute of Standard and Software Technology, they looked at this concept that yes, this is a good concept and we can exploit it, we can use it to a larger extent in the cloud computing game. So they carried on the concept of virtualization, and then again there were two people like Popek and Goldberg. They studied it, and then they say, then what if we can provide an operating system as a virtual entity to the user, just like the Ubuntu is being done in this case on the base operating system is still Windows. Why can't we provide the resources as a virtual entity to the users, right? So now again, it depends upon the client service providers. What kind of resources do you want? The hard disk, the RAM space, the primary storage media, the secondary storage media, the cache memory, the operating system, the network devices, the bridges, routers, switches, gateways. Means the CSP, the cloud service provider, has to decide that what kind of resources it can provide as a virtual entity to the end users. And then depending on the resources that they will provide, they will charge. So that is what one of the characteristic feature of the of the cloud computing is metered service, measured self-service. Means you will be measured, you will be quantified depending on the type of the. For example, in this case, I use Ubuntu for 1 hour, right? So I might pay the cost of Ubuntu, let's say $1 or 10 rupees per INR if you come to 70 rupees. So $1 is same as 70 rupees per month or per week or per day. That depends upon the revenue model, the economic model being used by the cloud service providers. So that's the biggest advantage for going for a virtualization. Now, virtualization also introduces the concept of load balancing. Load balancing means if too much of load comes on the servers, they need to manage the resources well. Otherwise, the performance of the servers will go down and the user will say, oh, I'm paying, let's say, $10 per week, and this is the worst kind of service I'm being provided by that cloud service provider. I will never ever come to them. So they need to do a proper load balancing. So there are many algorithms today which do a balancing of the load. Load means here the number of incoming client requests. That means number of footprints, footfalls rather, digital imprints. How many number of time you visit a particular website, for how long you are there, what are the kind of services and resources you access from the particular website. For example, I log into the Flipkart or the Snapdeal or the Amazon, and I am interested in online shopping. So I will enter, I will give my user ID and password, log into their portal, which is being shared on one of the clouds. And then at times I would like to do a shopping of the clothing. I would like to do a shopping of digital devices, laptops, mobile phones, or maybe if I'm a literature avid reader, I might browse certain books in which I'm interested. So how much amount of time I'm spending on the portal? What are the kind of services I'm accessing from that? Because everything is paid. Nothing comes free in the world. That should be very sure. Only parents and the nature are the two free entities in the world. Beyond nature and beyond parents, everything is chargeable. Now, it might look free, but nothing is free. They will adjust the cost in somewhere else. So to you, it might look free that I'm getting a free service from some of the vendors. Nothing is free. They are getting a footprints onto you, and in some way or the other, maybe directly or indirectly, using a third party vendor, they will bill you, they will charge you. At times you come to know about these charges, at times you don't come to know about these charges that you are being billed. So that's an indirect model of revenue generation. So coming back to the concept of virtualization, virtualization means anything that can be provided in a virtual way to the end user. So accessing is one of them. We need to access the virtual resources from anywhere around the world. Application is another one. A cloud has a multiple application instances and direct request to an instance based on certain conditions. So the cloud service provider can give you directly one hop activation to your application, one hop connectivity to your application, or it may pull the request first and then provide the resources later. It depends on the kind of application based services being provided by the cloud service provider. Then CPUs, the central processing units. The computers can be partitioned into a set of virtual machines with each machine being assigned a workload. So I can have the one dual core CPU on my system. I create the instances for it, and then the multiple users will directly be accessing the my CPU. But then I again need to apply some of the scheduling disciplines, like the longest job first, the shortest job first, the first come first served basis, the time slice driven round robin scheduling basis. Some of the discipline need to be applied to manage and monitor the CPUs. Alternatively, system can be virtualized using the load balancing technologies. So use some of the load balancing disciplines, and then just to make sure that the system runs work perfectly fine on 24 by 7 by 365 basis. Storage is another area wherein I can do a virtualization, like the primary and the secondary storage medias. The servers, they have got a huge space, which the normal PCs or desktops or laptops cannot have. So what the servers, what they do a virtualization wherein I can access the content, uh, the storage areas from the cloud service providers. For example, we took an example earlier also. Let me have another example just in case if you missed it out. I want to access the cloud-based services. So what I do, I go to the Google, I say NIC Meghraj cloud calculator, because I want to access the services. I also want to know what I will be charged for what kind of the service. Now this is a cost calculator for the NIC Meghraj cloud. We can see here it's a get cloud services, my cloud. This is my dashboard for it, and this is a cost calculator. It's about the Meghraj cloud by the NIC, and the cloud resources cost has been revised from the first, so around a year back. So they have not revised the charges in 2021. Now they ask me what are the services type I want. I say computing services, software services. Let's keep everything as basic. Let's not go to the higher end. The first is the default one, the computing services. I choose the computing services, right? They ask me for the hypervisor. Now, hypervisor we'll discuss. It's a part of the virtualization and load balancing feature. We'll discuss it later on. So they say enterprise or open source. I say let's open source just to minimize the cost. Then their type of the resource: virtual machine, additional storage, additional virtual CPUs, additional RAM. I say no additional because I want to keep the cost very minimal. I say virtual machines. What they say, what are the type of server you want? Database server, web plus application server, and web server. I don't want database. My website is static. I don't know, there's no login. I don't want web plus application. I want a simple web server for hosting my site. So I choose a server which will have the lower cost. Then they ask me what is the configuration of server you would like to have. So I can see whole lot of the features available here, starting from one virtual machine with one virtual CPU, 1 GB of RAM and 70 GB of the storage space, going up to, let's look at the higher end they provide. They provide one virtual machine with 16 virtual CPU, 64 GB of RAM and 70 GB of the storage space. So I don't have that much money. I go for the lowest. Then they say which kind of platform you want, Linux or Ubuntu. I'm more comfortable in Ubuntu. I choose the Ubuntu environment. Then they ask me what is the kind of environment you want. Production, that's only one environment they're offering right now. So yes, I want to design and develop a software. I use a production environment. Now, if you look at this entire selection of parameters here, I have choose those services which are going to cost me very less price. Now I ask NIC what is you are going to charge from me. So NIC says for this parameter you are asked, we are going to charge you 2,150 rupees per month. That means approximately 25,000 rupees per annum, roughly. Yeah. So that is the amount of money I have to pay to the NIC to get their cloud-based services. Once I have seen the cost, I will make the payment, and then I go to the cloud-based services of the NIC. And then they will provide me with the login ID and password, and then accordingly I enter it, and the cloud-based services are now available for me. Now I can log into their servers and upload my website or upload my data or upload my portal, any kind of the data which I would like to provide to the users as such. I can do it. Let's take a simple example. I work in an IoT project, or I work in the area of blockchain technology, and I start a project at my own end as a teacher level. Now I want, let's say, five of you are interested in working IoT, or if five of you are interested in working blockchain technology, and you say, sir, we would like to be a part of your project. I say, good. So what I do here, I go to the NIC, I buy the cloud space from them, and I host my blockchain project or the IoT project onto the cloud platform, and I give the login credentials to all of you. So maybe you are based right now in Delhi or Lucknow or Chandigarh or Allahabad or wherever is your hometown, and then you get a access to my blockchain or the IoT project from that location only, because NIC has provided the cloud-based services pan India, all over India they are available. So you don't have to come to Delhi to get to work on my blockchain or the IoT project. Wherever you are located, wherever you are based, in whichever part of the India or abroad, even NIC provides services on abroad also, those services are a bit chargeable in that sense. Then you can work on my blockchain project and contribute to it from then and there only, because I have hosted my project on a cloud-based platform. That's the biggest advantage for going for the cloud-based services. That's why we say cloud computing and distributed computing, they go hand in hand, because distributed computing to work successfully, they need to use the cloud computing features. Cloud computing to work in a better way, they will require distributed computing features. So both of them, they go amicably well in hand in hand. Now these were the services which were all minimal, right? Now suppose 5 years down the line or 10 years down the line, I become a big company, right? I have a account startup. Now I'm a big company. I go for everything very high-fi. Software services, I say Tejas, Service Labs from 2 GB, why not 50 GB? I go for that. Software license term, let it be 1 year, because they don't give for that more than that. I go for a calculate cost. And they say this is an estimated cost. 536,181. That's a huge amount of the cost. I'm going for a Tejas services, which is part of the service, the high-end services, high-end cloud-based services, and it is annum per year basis. So it depends upon me. If I'm an early startup, I don't have the funds. I'm looking for venture capitalists to put a money into my, like just like a Nykaa IPO came very soon. Initially, they were all hardly had any money. They went to the stock market to get the money from the public, and now the company has better performance than the Paytm, because what Paytm started on day one and what Nykaa started on day one, there's a huge difference. So it all depends upon the kind of the company and how much trust, the faith the people have in your company. So if you say, if you're an early startup, nobody will put up money. Then you have to bear the cost of startup on your own for almost for 1 year down the time. So you will take all the cloud-based service very low, very cheap. But then once you become a good enterprise company, which you have got a good infrastructure, many people are putting a money into your company, then yes, you can go for a high-end cloud-based services like the example which I've shown you. Go for a software services, service name is Tejas. Service labs are on the highest side from 20 GB to 50 GB, and software license term for all the software that I'm going to use from them are going to be for a, they are going to charge the license fee cost only for a duration of 1 year. And that's a huge amount of money I have to pay them, because now I'm a big company, I can afford the cost. As simple as that. So that's how we go for a virtualization concept, wherein cloud service provider can provide all the resources as a virtual entity to the user. However, if the number of users keep on increasing onto the servers, to the cloud-based servers, then they need to go for a load balancing strategy, because they need to manage the load well. Otherwise, the performance will go drastically reduced. So we have seen the storage area can be provided, ranging from 1 GB to 50 GB of the storage space. So one characteristic of the cloud computing is virtualized network access to a service that we already discussed. And no matter where you access the service, you are directly available to the available resources. So if I have hosted a blockchain project or IoT project, wherever you are located, you will be logged in to the NIC cloud servers in Delhi, where I've already hosted my blockchain project, and the task which is assigned to you, you will contribute to that particular task as such. So if I ask you to design one block of a blockchain, so I will give you that exclusive rights to put the content, to generate the hash value for that particular block using MD5 or SHA algorithm, and you generate the hash and put it into the block, and the block will be integrated as a part of the blockchain which I'm creating on a Google Cloud platform or on the NIC Cloud platform. So wherever you are, resources can easily be accessed. And the technology used to distribute service requests, which I've been speaking for a few minutes now, is a load balancing. Load balancing and virtualization goes hand in hand, because virtualization is providing a resources in a virtual environment, but then maybe हो सकता है बहुत सारे users बढ़ जाए, and the things might go beyond the point. There I need to go for load balancing. So initially no server does a load balancing. Only till a threshold value comes, only if a threshold value is called, then only they go for the load balancing features. So load balancing is an optimization technique. Yes, it can be used to increase utilization of the CPUs, the throughput. They can be used to reduce the low latency, reduce response time, and avoid system overload. So it's a big advantages of going for a load balancing feature. I can add more features to them. That depends upon me, my load balancing algorithms, how much good algorithm I can design that can help me to increase the utilization of my CPUs and cutting down the cost which I incur on throughput and the response time, because every user wants a quick response time. Nobody wants they have sent a request, the request is getting processed, and the response will come after a few seconds. Everyone wants quick, instant response time. And the following network resources can easily be load balanced, like network interfaces and services, the DNS, the domain naming system, FTP file transfer protocol, HTTP hypertext transfer protocol. Even we got the HTTPS hypertext transfer protocol in a secure mode. So web server receives the HTTP request on port number 80, and the web servers, the cloud-based server receives the HTTPS request on the port number 443. The connections through the switches, through the routers, through the hubs, so switches, gateways, they can all be done using a load balancing. Again, the load balancing can be applied to manage the incoming client requests on the routers, because otherwise the routers will get overloaded with so many incoming client requests. So you need to do the load balancing there also. Normally for networking we use Cisco routers. They are one of the best series of the routers available in the IT industry. But then I can't do all the routing only through one router. I need to have the multiple entry and exit points on my networks. So I need to have the multiple number of routers installed on the networks. Possessing through computer system assignment, yes, virtual CPU assignment can be done. And then storage resources. Storage resources can be increased, they can be decreased. That again depends upon me, how I would like to quantify my storage resources, the primary and the secondary storage medias. Moving on to the load balancing further, a load balancing system can use different mechanism to assign service direction. Yes. Now again that depends upon the cloud service provider. What kind of the load balancing mechanism they use to handle multiple client requests. So the simplest load balancing mechanism, the load balancer listens to the network port for a service request. So they will keep on listening. When a request comes, they will redirect them to one of the servers. It's something like if you visit a hospital for a disease. So there are multiple OPDs available there. So you have to identify which is the disease you're suffering from. Is it orthopedic? Is it a gastroenterology? Is it a neural disorder? Is it a pediatric, a child-based disorder, child-based problem as such, or it's orthopedic, any kind of disease. So you need to identify which OPD because all the doctors are bound to their OPDs. So you have to identify which disease you are suffering from, and then you go to the concerned OPD, and then you identify the list of the doctors who would you like to go and visit. And then you choose one of them, then you take an appointment, make a prior payment, and then you visit him, and then he diagnoses you, and then he suggests the medicines for your recovery, and then your job is done. So here also, when a new request comes, the server will look that your request can be processed by which particular, because you have got a load balancer there, and there are 10 servers behind the scene. They will redirect to one of the free servers, one which is having less number of requests at that particular point of time. That's the biggest advantage of using a load balancing. So your request will come on the port number 443 for the HTTPS protocol, hypertext transfer protocol on secure mode, or it can come on the port number 80 for the insecure mode. And then if it's a secure mode, then yes, secure socket layer need to be established. You might be doing online transaction like credit or debit card transaction, and the routing need to be done so that all your information remain in a secure mode. So encryption has to be done. The cryptographic technique like Caesar cipher, Wiener cipher, Railfeld cipher has to be used to make sure your credit and debit card details remain safe and secure. So port number 443 will receive a request, and behind the load balancer there are 4, 5, 10, 15 servers. So it will redirect to one of the servers which is having the least number of requests at that particular point of time. So when a request from a client or a service requester arrives, the load balancer uses a scheduling algorithm. Now again, there are multiple scheduling algorithms. As I said earlier, we have the first come first served basis, shortest job first basis, longest job first basis, time slice driven round robin scheduling, or there is certain request waiting for a very long period of time. So starvation may not happen. So you ask, okay, come, you get a resource first. So it all depends on the load balancer scheduling algorithm, and then the particular web server will be assigned the request depending on the type of the request. If the request is very critical, very urgent, for example, we in the times of COVID, we have seen there was a very crisis for remdesivir injection. There were very large number of the crisis for the medicines like IV vector and many other medicines for the COVID treatment. So there was a huge crisis for them. So they were urgent. All other services, all other many hospitals had to shut down their other OPDs, and the entire hospitals were now dedicated to the COVID treatment only as such. So the scheduling discipline work means the urgency and the criticality of the data, the urgency and criticality of the problems may override the scheduling algorithms. That's what I wanted to say. Many of the hospitals have to shut down their normal OPDs just to cater to the inflow of the patients who were suffering from the COVID as such. So load balancing is good, but then priority of the data, criticality of the data, urgency of the data also makes sense. They also need to be taken care of. Otherwise, we might have a problem that the urgent resources are not getting prioritized, and the time is getting wasted on the non-prioritized services.